This video is going to contain spoilers for RWBY, so if you don't want that, go and watch it on Crunchyroll, or watch it on Rooster Teeth if it's still around by the time this video is uploaded. Enjoy.
RWBY is a 3D anime created by Monty for Rooster Teeth Entertainment. Like many anime series, RWBY uses its opening credit sequence to hint at the themes and plot beats of the season. This, combined with Oom's seemingly supernatural talent for directing 3D animation, especially action, makes these glorified music videos a sight to behold, even during the show's early days where production value was painfully low.
The obvious place to start this analysis is, of course, This Will Be the Day, which served as the opening sequence for the show's first volume. The first shot is of RWBY's main character, Ruby, spelled differently. Ruby's cape is fading into petals, a reference to her semblance, and she is paying respects at her mother's grave. Analysing these OPs in 2024, as compared to the years they originally came out, gives us the benefit of hindsight and allows us to compare the characters to where they are, and not only at the end of the season, but also from where they were last time we saw them. This is the setting of the Red trailer, probably the most iconic thing to come from the RWBY franchise, but I want to start off by discussing how important Summer is to RWBY. Obviously, RWBY takes a lot physically from Summer, but it's quite clear that Summer, despite dying when RWBY was very young, had a profound effect on RWBY's self-perception. RWBY dresses very similarly to her mother. RWBY eventually learns that she inherited her mother's abilities as a silver-eyed warrior, and RWBY took her mother's surname. Summer's impact on RWBY is integral to her character arc, especially in Volume 9, where the climax of the entire season is built on RWBY quite literally choosing to be herself. Moving back on topic, RWBY looks up from Summer's grave to see Summer standing at the edge of the cliff with her back turned, symbolising RWBY chasing her mother's legacy. Eventually, Summer disintegrates into rose petals, which represents her leaving RWBY. See also Red Like Roses Part 2. But we also see the moon start to disintegrate and explode. It's worth noting that in the OP, the moon is a solid circle, whereas if you actually watch the show, you'll notice that the moon has been shattered. It's possible that this could represent RWBY finding herself in a conflict that is way more consequential than she expected, or they just needed a cool transition for the title drop. We then see a sequence of shots showcasing RWBY's teammates. Based on the settings, we can assume that these shots, like the one that introduced RWBY, take place around the time of the characters' respective trailers. We are then introduced to one of the show's primary antagonists, the Grimm. Their inclusion in the OP indicates to the viewer that the Grimm as antagonists are going to be very integral to the show's plot. This is then followed by shots of Roman Torchwick and his gang, followed by the characters who would later be revealed to be Cinder, Mercury, and Emerald. These share the same purpose as the shots of the Grimm. We're treated to a short sequence of shots showcasing the girls preparing to battle a horde of Grimm that's surrounding them. This is followed by a shot of the series' leading man, Jean. Jean is staring at the statue in the courtyard of Beacon Academy, representing both the pressure he feels to become a huntsman, but also his guilt at faking his way into Beacon and feeling like he doesn't belong. But luckily for Jean, Pyrrha and the rest of Team Juniper are there to support him. We establish Ozpin and Glinda looking down at Beacon from the tower at the school centre, establishing both their authority, as well as alluding to this idea that there is something bigger than the students and the public can see, like a player looking down on a chessboard, a common motif throughout the series. I'm going to be honest, I found Time to Say Goodbye to be a bit thin on the ground in terms of things that are worth analysing. It showcases the characters and there's some cool imagery that doesn't really mean much. The big takeaway is that the villains are organising, so Ozpin and his students are organising in response. The opening for Volume 3 is titled When It Falls, and as you can expect, falling is a common motif in both the opening and the season itself. There are several moments where characters find themselves in controversy, meaning that they've arguably fallen from grace, and the season ends with the fall of Beacon. Getting back to the opening, it opens on a rose petal falling on a forest, with a single rose sitting in the ground that gets stomped out by a horde of Grimm. Roses are obviously iconography of RWBY, and it getting stomped out is foreshadowing for what's going to happen to RWBY at the end of the season, leaving her defeated and mentally broken. We get some establishing shots of the characters, most of which are important to the plot, before we return to the shot of the Grimm where it is revealed that they are charging a flaming Beacon Academy. More foreshadowing. We see a shot of the Grimm breaking through a window that Ozpin and Glinda are hiding behind, showing that even they, high up in their tower, are not safe. This transitions into a shot of Ironwood and the Elysian military, which is, say it with me now, more foreshadowing. The presence of the Atlas military is shown to be a key factor in the eventual fall of Beacon, and once again, with the benefit of hindsight, it sets up Ironwood as a character who isn't completely an ally to Team RWBY and Co. This is then followed by a shot of Blake walking through the setting of the Black trailer. She looks over to see Adam, her former partner, and his army of White Fang members. I think it's worth noting that we're never explicitly told what the term partner means in this context. It is heavily implied to be romantic, with Adam's actions in the show being stalkerish and the RWBY crew calling Adam's behaviour abusive and uncomfortable. Once again, we return to the shot of the Grimm attacking Beacon, but this time the heroes are charging back at them, followed by cool action sequences. The opening introduces us to the new characters of Crow and Winter and alludes to their ongoing feud. The photo of Team Stark that Crow carries with him is then shown. This shot demonstrates both Crow's closeness to RWBY and Yang, continuing to be a close friend of Tai, as well as his friendship with Summer. We get our first shot of Raven without her mask on, building on one of the dangling plot threads from Volume 2, but also serves as a transition to the next scene. The camera zooms in on the gears in Crow's weapon, which alludes to his closeness with Ozpin. The final shot of the opening is RWBY and Juniper falling, and despite how much they all cling to each other, they do fall apart. Juniper, Team RWBY's friends, are the first to go. We linger on a shot of a very anxious looking RWBY before showing the team broken and defeated. The opening to Volume 4 starts with a shot of a sphere that looks like a top-down view of a teardrop. The sphere contains the colours red, white, black and yellow, which obviously represent RWBY, Weiss, Blake and Yang. The sphere is swallowed by Grimm, but 4 particles of light, also representing the girls, start swirling around and they burst up the tower of the now destroyed Beacon Academy. They then proceed to spread out across Remnant, just like the girls. The camera follows RWBY's particle, and after a title drop we see RWBY walking alone in a forest. A fierce gust of wind blows off her hood and causes her to turn around, where she sees what remains of Team Juniper, and the 4 start walking together, just like how when RWBY was left feeling depressed after Volume 3, it was Jean, Nora and Ren who picked her up and helped her get to Vacuo to continue the fight against the new big bad, Salem. A crow flies out of the forest, which transitions into a shot of Crow, alluding to him following Team Ranger, but the reveal that the bird isn't Crow alludes to the proper introduction of Raven into the series. This leads into a shot of Weiss standing in her bedroom, introducing us to the characters of Klein, Whitley and Jack, as well as informing us that Ironwood isn't going to be making appearances. This leads into a shot of Blake riding the ferry to Menagerie, where we are shown Sun tagging along with her, as well as the introduction of Callie and Gira. Next is a shot of Yang struggling to cope without her arm. Yang then falls into a fiery shot of Adam referencing the trauma he left her with. The shot of Adam is expanded upon by introducing the other antagonists like Corsac, Fennec, Hazel, Tyrion, Watts and Salem. We are then shown a sequence of action scenes showing Tyrion attacking RWBY, Blake's conflict with Adam, Weiss learning to use her glyphs, and Ranger fighting off a horde of Grimm, before settling on a shot of the girls staring off into the distance where we get a second title drop. We open on the shot of Haven Academy, which transitions into a series of shots of the girls still separated even after Volume 4, but we are then shown them all setting out on their individual journeys. We see Ranger hanging out in Mistral alongside a very unimpressed Crow and a very awkward Oscar. When Oscar brandishes Ozpin's cane, a picture of Ozpin drifts across the screen, alluding to the fact that Ozpin's soul now cohabits Oscar's body. We transition into a shot of Leonardo, the headmaster of Haven. The tendrils of the Seer Grimm enter from the foreground, whereas the sneering face of Arthur Watts composes the background, implying the intimidation imposed on Leo by Salem and her forces. Adam and Hazel make an appearance before we're shown the continuing adventures of Blake and Sun in Menagerie. We are shown Cinder and Vernal staring down at each other as a reference to Cinder's hunt for the maiden's powers. A crow flies over the camera which changes Cinder and Vernal into Raven and Yang, who have their backs to each other but then turn to look at each other. The shot acts as a metaphor for their relationship. We are shown a shot of Ilya, and the presence of Fennec and Corsac implies their influence over her. We then see a series of action shots that foreshadows not only Blake's fight with Ilya, but mostly the fight at Haven Academy, ending on Team RWBY charging at Salem, who is literally towering over them. After opening on some cool shots of the girls, we get a title dropped, followed by the moon shattering. This is foreshadowing for the lore jump we are due to receive early in the volume. We then see the supporting cast waiting in the train station before we see Team RWBY on the train. It's worth noting the depressed look Yang and Blake have, and the fact that they are to some degree separated from RWBY and Weiss. We see the reflection of Adam in the window, which tells the viewer why Blake and Yang look so sad. The viewer is then introduced to Maria. When the camera zooms into her eye, it transitions to RWBY, and the camera then zooms into her eye, which alludes to the mentor-student relationship RWBY and Maria are set to have this season. This transitions into a shot of Crow taking a swig from his flask, before being grabbed by the apathy, hinting at Crow's alcoholism arc. This combined with a shot of RWBY fighting what is meant to be the apathy but is in reality the imp, alludes to the contents of episodes 4 to 6. We see a mysterious woman in a hood, who would later be revealed to be a not-dead Cinder walking through a rainy street when Roman Torchwick's bowler hat flies past her, alluding to Neo's return. The viewers then shown Adam and the rest of Salem's faction, followed by the woman herself, just to establish the antagonists. Salem lets out a scream of rage before blue smoke engulfs the frame, alluding to Jin, which thematically transitions us to a shot of pre-transformation Salem standing in front of a statue of Ozma. We then see a shot of all of Ozma's past lives before we linger on Ozpin, who fades into Oscar. Oscar then proceeds to get jumped by Jean, which alludes to the really brief conflict they had towards the end of the volume. We then see a shot of Cinder waving her sword around mixed into a sequence of shots showing the trainer fight from the start of the season. The action sequence shows all of Team RWBY fading into each other before eventually them all working together in this really slick shot. We start on a series of silhouettes showing Team RWBY and Team Orange. We then see Team RWBY staring down Atlas in their Volume 4 outfits. This is then followed by a title drop, then a montage of the girls transitioning from their Volume 1, Volume 4 and eventually Volume 7 outfits to show how far they've come. We then see Ironwood somewhat sinisterly staring at a map of Atlas, followed by a sequence of shots very similar to the start of the opening that introduces the Aesops. A sequence showing Watts and Tyrion informs us that they are going to be meddling this season. Ironwood shoots the camera and then turns away sad, hinting at his inner conflict on what to do when Salem's forces come to Atlas. Shots of the supporting cast, specifically the Schnee family, tells us that they're going to be involved. RWBY is then surrounded by her friends with a dark shot of Atlas burning in the background, which is contrasting us with the brightly lit reintroduction of Penny. We then see a series of action sequences showing many of the fights and conflicts of the season. RWBY, Juniper and the Aesops teaming up on a mission, Robin's political conflict with Ironwood, Ironwood's fight with Oscar in the final episode, as well as Robin and Crow fighting Tyrion. Also worth pointing out that in the shot of a protester throwing a rock at the hologram of Ironwood, it switches to Jacques, hinting at his rise to power as councilman. After some more silhouettes, we are shown a splash screen of all the heroes, and the last shot shows the scepter, the item at the heart of Atlas's Ark's conflict. The Volume 8's opening, For Every Life, begins by contrasting two types of shots, one showing a normal Atlas and one engulfed in flames and crawling with Grimm. We see RWBY preparing to take on the Horde alone, and she turns around to see her friends standing idly with their backs to her, for reasons I'll explain. We then get a series of shots showing how far the individual members of Team RWBY have come, how far they've grown, and this is contrasted by a shot of Ironwood to show how far he, and because of him, his kingdom have fallen. We then see Clover's hand letting go of his crest, and Crow and the Aesops are reflected in the leaves of the pins, showing the effect of Clover's death. When Crow's upset, Robin is there to lend him a helping hand. Prison bars then pass across the screen, which not only foreshadow the pair's imprisonment, but also transitions into Oscar's capture at the hands of Salem. We see Team RWBY's weapons falling through what looks to be the pocket dimension that the residents of Atlas travel through during the volume's climax. At this point, I shouldn't have to tell you what technique is being used here. We see a shot of Jean standing in the tundra, and behind him are Ren and Nora with their backs turned to each other, reminding us that God giveth and God taketh away. The flash of lightning across Nora's face hints at her scarring later in the volume. Weiss and Winter walk past each other, only stopping to look after the other has passed, alluding to the wedge driven between them by their varying loyalties to Ironwood. We are shown Whitley and Willow while the Schnee family crest falls and shatters because the family, at the end of the volume, has been broken. The crest falls onto a chessboard that Salem and Ironwood are players on. See also the previous comments about recurring motifs. This also explains why RWBY's friends were stood like that at the start of the opening. They're all just pawns in the game that Salem and Oz are playing against each other. It's also worth noting that when Salem and her pieces attack, Ironwoods disappear and leave him, allowing him to be destroyed. We see a shot that contrasts Watts and Pietro. The camera panning to Penny alludes to their war over Penny's body. We then see the shot of Ren and Nora trying and failing to metaphorically reach out to each other before their respective friends step in to support them. We get a brief action sequence of Team RWBY fighting Grimm before time freezes and Cinder walks by and Ghosts Emerald, setting up her side switch. We get some establishing shots of Salem's forces as well as a shot depicting the relics. We then get a shot that contrasts the shots at the beginning of the opening before the ground opens up and Team RWBY fall in, foreshadowing them falling into the Ever After at the end of the volume. The final shot sets up several plot beats like the Hound, Evil Penny, as well as the way Crescent Rose lands in the Ever After. It's also worth highlighting how the phrase Happy Ever After becomes Happy Never Again, because sad. Inside opens with the camera falling through the pocket dimension. You then see monochromatic representations of all the characters that fell into the Ever After, Jean and Neo followed by Yang, Weiss and Blake, and then RWBY is singled out. This is done not only because she's the main character, but also because a big focus in Volume 9 is her development as a character. We then get our regularly scheduled Look How Far They've Come shot. Phrasing. It's worth noting that every time a new version of a character appears they get closer to the camera, but RWBY gets further away, because she is quite literally getting away from herself. A model of Alex is shown to compare the two characters' stories, and RWBY cries a single teardrop, which sets up her breakdown, but the teardrop turns into Crescent Rose, who is whisked away by the inhabitants of the Ever After. We are then introduced to the mice, Little specifically, and then some of the other minor characters of the season like the blacksmith, Jinxie Peddler, the Red Prince, and the Curious Cat. We see the shot of Crescent Rose falling get paid off when it shatters, and RWBY, Weiss, Blake and Yang and the silhouette of Alex are formed from the debris. We see Team RWBY following Alex, but we also see that RWBY is starting to lag behind. We get a shot introducing the herbalist, and we see Jean contrasted against Clocks in a shot that makes excellent use of negative space. We see a shot that references not only the pocket dimension, but also the Thunderstorm. This is followed by a shot that alludes to many things. It shows RWBY following after Alex. It also shows the Ever After, turning RWBY into a warped version of herself like it's revealed it did to Alex. But it also shows the bridge that Yang and Blake have to cross in order to resolve the tension in their relationship. When RWBY falls through a gap in the bridge, the shot transitions into a sugar cube falling into Neo's tea, alluding to the episode where Neo engages in a cheeky bit of mental abuse. We see a shot of a Jabberwocker and a book telling Alex's story burns. This is a reference to how Team RWBY need to stop following the story, or in other words, burn the book, if they want to get out of the Ever After. Out of the fires of the book steps the Rusted Knight. We see a shot of the big tree at the centre of the Ever After. The girls try to run up the tree, but end up falling through the fairy tale of the Ever After, before we linger on for a second on a shot of Neo, gleefully looking down the downfall of Team RWBY. This is contrasted against a shot of Alex washing up on the shore, and when she gets up, Crescent Rose also washes up, paralleling how Team RWBY got to the world.